Well, it's exactly 11 o'clock in the studios of Classic FM, Classic 105.5 and 105.9. And I want to say good morning to those of you that's on television. GBN's television, channel 7, channel 11, channel 20 if you're in cable, or if you're following us via the World Wide Web or on any other social media platform. I say thank you for being part of today's conversation. I'm Joseph Cadore. You call me JC. My guest this morning, no stranger to me, in no way, form, or fashion, and that I don't have to disclose to you in any way. Well, I'm telling you, he's no stranger to me. I don't think he's any stranger to the Grenadian public. Yeah. But he's here today in his capacity as a member of the... To speak cooperatives this morning is a conversation we started not just last week. That's an ongoing conversation. But I'm certain many of you probably you would ask the question: cooperatives, is this a new term? What are they? How can I be part of a cooperative? I have a few friends. We have a few bucks to get around. Can we decide? Why not pool our resources together? Yeah. Or maybe you're tired of working for John Doe. You want to work for Mimi now. Yeah, and the gang. How can we be part of that conversation? And Grimes, people, we've been having this conversation, and I often say the conversation must go beyond just hearing about cooperatives, but understanding how can I take the knowledge that I have, assimilate it, and make some positive change in our lives.
Yes, of course. So that's the reason we're on, to let the nation know about the power of cooperatives. So today we'll be first off, pardon my manners, good morning to the listening and viewing public across the Tri-Island state, and of course the diaspora. Because you probably have people in even apart from New York and all these places, even in Europe, listening to your program, yes? Yeah,
that is true.
And the wider Caribbean and so forth. So good morning to everybody, the listeners and viewers. So today, on behalf of the department, I'll be doing my best to explain really the powers and the role of the board of directors, but we can have a broad conversation around cooperatives in general. So again, to start off the program, you always define.
And it is always important. It is always important that you have a basis for for your conversation.
Yes.
If you don't define your conversation,
yes,
you leave it to go up in air.
Of course.
All of a sudden you start realizing we start talking football, talking GPSs, because we did not define the conversation.
That's true.
So we're going to define the conversation. Yeah. And even for those of you who probably was here last week, but it's always good. Cooperative.
What is a cooperative?
What is it in fact?
Yeah. So a cooperative is a jointly owned, democratically controlled business enterprise where individuals come together in order to foster the social, economic, and cultural needs. Right. So the aspect of this you have to pinpoint is that you need legally 10 persons to start a cooperative. And again, as I stated on earlier programs, there are basically two different types: the financial cooperatives, which are the credit unions in principle, which most Grenadians are a part of, and the non-financials, which our department oversees and regulates, right? So a jointly owned, democratically controlled business enterprise, right? And you need at least 10 persons to start it. And today we'll be having a broad conversation around the role of the board of directors, the powers of it. But today it's part 2. Because we had a conversation last week, and you asked a very pointed question, because you're a good listener, about a scenario. I don't know if you recall that scenario, where you sit in a meeting and we talk about uneven numbers so that you can have an end game in regards to voting, as far as the role of the board of directors. And you asked, well, if somebody abstains and you have a tie, what happens? And I responded to the fact that the board of directors, really, they have a duty of care to the organization, and they will find a way to come to a conclusion in terms of voting on a particular matter. I also stated that in the event that doesn't happen, the most important, the general body, the membership will have to intervene if it's a major decision that has to be made.
Right.
But I excluded one thing, and so this is where I'd want to start off today, right? So on this at this level, the board of directors, you have something called original and a casting vote.
Okay.
Right? So original vote, let's imagine here that there are 5 of us, everybody cast the vote in a particular direction. Right? Somebody abstains, so there's 2-2. You need somebody with a casting vote. And normally that who is empowered with that is the chairperson, the president, the director that is presiding over the meeting can say, okay, yes, I did vote originally, but seeing that we have a tie, we have a casting vote. And at the end of it now, we can come to a majority decision and a conclusion. So that's very important. That was a great question. So most bylaws would speak to original and casting vote as far as the boards are concerned. They are not always identical, but that is very useful. The presiding officer has some powers there.
And you get in the sense more and more that the way the board is set up is that it allows for it to maintain the integrity of the cooperative.
Yes. No, when boards are set up, the main thing you have to look at, or one of the main things, is the fact that you need diverse skill sets, personnel. So you need people who are good at accounting.
Right.
You need people who are good at minute taking. You need logical people who are strategic and visionary. And most boards throughout, apart from cooperatives, they will have those ingredients. And you need educated people, knowledgeable people. But JC, very important on all boards, and that intangible quality, you need people with integrity. You need honest people, because you could have all the skills and knowledge in the world, and I'll put it colloquially. If you're actually feed the organization, and we're speaking about cooperatives today, it will not go forward if those who sit on the board does not have a duty of care to the organization, but rather to themselves. So you need people who thinks generally about the organization and the forward development of the organization instead of enriching themselves.
Folks, in case you just joined us, myself and Brian Grimes this morning, I'll be continuing a conversation from last week. We're going through the high ends of the board, and you're probably thinking that's a conversation for the elites and learned minds. No, it isn't, really and truly. Yes. Cooperative touches and affects the lives of the layman as it is.
Yes.
Because the first thing we intimated last week, though, Brian, going back into the setup of the cooperative, there must be a common interest.
That's correct.
There must be a common interest.
Yes, whether it's social, economic, or cultural, as I stated earlier.
Right. Is it possible, and I'm hoping that we can, so persons can see, because one of the things we hinted to last week is that cooperatives has become and can and will become, and if not in Grenada, but in many parts of the world,
yes,
cooperatives has become the order of the day. When persons are realizing, right, listen, government has this role to play in the public sector. The private sector has its role, but you're noticing more and more these board agencies, they're becoming saturated.
Yes.
Yeah. And you are now left with a situation where how do you find forward progress in our growing economies? And way forward in the argument that cooperatives has been and will continue to be a valuable means of getting people to realize, listen, we can make a living by doing this. And that's a culture that we talk about, the education system, changing it.
Yes.
And I would want us to focus on that a bit if we can, that changing the education system, changing the culture and the way that we think is essential foreseeing the need that 20 years from now we'll still be seeing the need of what yourself and Emmons and the team that they're doing?
Well, it is a fact. The last program that we had last week, we spoke to the education system based on the conversation that we had in terms of how our education system is not geared towards cooperative building in terms of people working together. It's more geared towards what should I say, a competitive side where we compete for first, second, and third, and people are left by the wayside, going forward. But as we stated during that time, in terms of a society, we need everybody to build a society. And the truth is, in terms of our education system, the curriculum does not always extract all the talents that students have. So sometimes they have an innate talent that is not in the curriculum and they feel left out. They feel a bit deficient. But we need to be able, within the education system, to really pull that out and change the curriculum. And when you do that, and you have a more cooperative centered education system, that lends itself to the society developing under a cooperative model. We work together, we don't compete, there is very little division, and each talent adds to whatever project that there is for nation building. And we see that in a lot of European countries. The Scandinavian countries have a lot of cooperatives. Spain in Europe have a lot of cooperatives. And if you want to look within the Caribbean, Dominica, they have a strong cooperative culture where people work together and so forth. Their population is not as big as Grenada. So the idea and the concept of cooperatives, this is what the department is really trying to push, and Grenadians will do themselves a favor in terms of learning more about cooperatives and trying to delve into it as a business model, right? But it's not just a business model, it is also a culture. And I'm sitting here, and one community that comes to mind as far as having a cooperative culture, and I was fascinated by it during my school days. I remember one time, I'm from Grenada, the Deep South, the Great South, and I went to a friend in the village of Montmorris. And I was startled to see how much development is taking place there outside of the ambits probably of maybe a government or some other body. The people in the village, they build their own community center. Right, they organize sporting competitions. They use the skill sets of the people in that said village to construct roads and do all sorts of things. And that always stuck with me up to this point as an adult, to see how that village operates. If that can be transferred outside of Montmorris throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, I think our country can go forward at even a greater pace.
And that's a sort of culture that gives ownership. And people take responsibility for it.
Yes.
It is one thing if something is handed to you.
Yes.
You ask an MP, and of course he has his own agenda.
Yes.
So you bring two plywood for you and a block, and you throw in something.
Yes.
Nobody tends to take ownership because it becomes from the government. But it has a different meaning, it has greater meaning and self-worth to you.
Yes.
When you could say we came together, and the we factor is what is needed in growing our country, growing Grenada.
Yes. That is a fact, and you're on the ball with that. Our old principal, Mr. Victor Ashby, he would say that you're on the ball. So yes, that's a fact, because we have what we call the cooperative values, and those values are self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity. So those, what you just spoke about, that concept is really embedded into the cooperative model. And again, I will keep repeating it as the program goes along. We will do well as a people, as a society, as a country, to really adopt more cooperative values and the business model cooperatives for people to get out of poverty, because we have a lot of people. We talk about the education system, we talk about employment and so forth, how it is geared, and you know that, and the listening public, they know that You go to school, you set up yourself to, you go and you work in Georgia Huggins, Hubbard's, the government of Grenada. And that is not a bad thing because I am a public officer. Yes. I'm thankful for my job, and most people are thankful for the jobs. But we have seen when there is what should I say? Saturation.
Reducing opportunities.
You have people that are being churned out, hundreds of graduates every year, and they can't find employment. So maybe something that can be done within the curriculum, apart from the technical aspect, as was spoken of by people like Timothy Antoine and so forth. We can have a more entrepreneurial approach to things, right?
But you know what is interesting, right?
Yes.
It exists right under our noses because there are individuals. Let's say you look around the tongue of St. George, you look at whatever construction, you look at the major business players within the heart of St. George, and you ask yourself, but is this accidental or is it by divine purpose that you find most of the businesses within tongue, it's being run outside of those corporate statutory elements and all of that. But most of the business within tongue is being controlled by a specific race and culture. People from that we would say that are not necessarily they didn't start as bona fide Grenadians. But what is important though, they came with that mindset, that culture that says if we pool our resources, but look at it. Let's forget cooperatives. Let's forget the term cooperatives. And we look at, let's say, mainstream, the big corporate Grenada. There is what you refer to the laws of diminishing returns when you look at businesses. How do you get that? It's because they understand the benefits that comes together and the laws of diminishing returns, which will say to you that if we pull what we have together, it makes it easier now for us to pass those benefits on to our customers, and they do that quite well. That is an absolute fact. My colleague who was here on the last program, Mr. Emmons, he referred to the Syrian community, the Indian community, as we call it colloquially. But we will do well to take an example from them. And we spoke about the cooperative versus the competitive. Yes, they all come. Sometimes they are not even blood. But everything goes in one container. They save costs immediately, right? Putting this stuff together there. You go in a particular store, right? One of them may not have the product that you're looking for. They point you to their friend and their colleague, go there. But they are building together. They are growing together as a community, right? So what you're speaking about is so true. We, as Grenadians, will do well to adopt that same attitude of togetherness and unity in our 50th anniversary independence. If you meet, going forward, you meet a local business person. It says the store closes 4 o'clock. You get there at 5 minutes past 4. They're going to remind you as though you don't know. Look the sign on the wall. It says we close 4 o'clock. The Indian community, the Syrian community, they understand. Listen to me. That every time you allow, there is your potential sale, and it's part of the sales process. Right? So there's a prospect. I come to you, I now become a prospect. What do you do with the prospect? You want to vet the prospect. Now, when you turn me away, chances are, okay, I'm not going to go back. But the reference to which you made, I had an experience of that very nature with one of those Syrians. I went to purchase an item and I was using my card. Now he doesn't have the card system at his store. Now you would think he would tell me, well, Zafir. And allow me to walk out. No. The gentleman literally walked. He said, listen, I go by my friend. And I said, and they had a conversation, and I guess that was to walk. You know what? We'll figure out the back end of how you get back your money, and we reconcile our goods. But he understands. This is a customer that's here, and I still was brave enough to ask for a discount.
Of course.
And he offered me a discount, and I know had it been one of, God forbid, one of our local persons. Boy, you know things hard. Yada yada, and they give me a million reasons. He makes me happy. What happens? I am a satisfied customer and I return.
Of course, yes. So just to go on train. So what you're saying is very accurate to the topic at hand. Is the powers of the board of directors, right? And as I stated earlier, the board. The individuals must have diverse skill sets, they must have knowledge and things of that nature, and they must have the duty of care and a certain kind of characteristic and nobility about doing the job. So cooperatives are not set up with a profit motive. Obviously, they're going to make profit for it to be sustainable, but it's about community building. Right, it's about nation building. Right, so this is why you need individuals with a particular mindset, a sort of selfless mindset. Apart from the natural skills that they need to serve on the board, those intangible qualities are necessary. Right, so the board, they have to. Some of the things that they have to do, they have to monitor transactions, adhere to the Cooperative Societies Act, the regulations and the bylaws, right? So this is the act of Parliament that guides cooperatives.
Right.
As I stated on an earlier program, I spoke about the non-financials and the financials.
Right.
This act governs both of
Everything.
them. Eventually, they're going to split it, and you'll have one for the non-financials also, which is a good thing because it's pretty unique.
But while you mentioned that, Brian, it's important that for persons who that understand, okay, we did say, for example, cooperatives, credit unions,
Yes.
is an ideal example
Yes,
of
financial cooperatives.
financial cooperatives.
Yes.
One of the center to cooperative, to the credit unions, they will tell you the advantage you have of being a part of a credit union
Yes.
is that you are a member. This is about us.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that they sell for you.
Of course.
So when you go to get to get a loan with them, you're not going to get a loan as an outsider.
Of course.
You're getting a loan as is one of us. This is our money that is being pulled together. Yeah, and that's a whole cooperative conversation
That
says, listen, this is about us. You get benefits from it. That's why when you go at the end of the year, when the credit union, they give dividends.
Yeah.
That's why
Right.
you qualify
Right.
to get back something, because it is your money, our money that is being spent for economic development.
That is a very, very beautiful point, and it is a critical and important point in terms of the benefits of the cooperatives.
Yeah.
So I would just want to divert a little bit because we're talking about non-financials, but we use that example of credit unions, the financials, which everybody knows about. So you compare it to a bank.
Right.
You basically you don't have much say or sway in regards to how the bank applies its policy and so forth.
Correct.
But with a cooperative or credit union, guess what? You have an AGM.
Correct.
And they put forward policies to you, and you can vote and say no. Even if you have $100 inside the credit union, you have a say because you are a shareholder.
Correct.
Slash owner of the cooperative, and this is why it is such an incredible vehicle for national development. So, for example, in Grenada, about 80% of the population are part of credit unions.
Right.
And getting a little loan is not as difficult because it's a family atmosphere, right? It's a family atmosphere and it's not as stringent. We hear a lot of talks now about, regulating the credit unions because they are growing so big and they are probably outperforming the banks. So that is our next debate. My personal opinion on that is like, let credit unions be credit unions, cooperatives be cooperatives, and let banks be banks. But that's for the bigger boys to discuss. And you made a next good point, right, about dividends and surpluses and so forth. So this is part of the role of the board of directors. So they have to evaluate the financial statements, the books and things of that nature, right, on a monthly or meeting by meeting basis. And then they have to decide, okay, well, based on this sort of profit margin, we are able to give back X or why to our membership at the end of the day. Of course, with discussion with the membership and with explanation and so forth. So if you're in the red, you don't expect for the board to recommend that we have massive profit sharing, because you would collapse the cooperative, and they will explain that to the members. You might get a little bit of pushback, but if you explain it properly and they have the interest of the cooperative at heart, they will listen to you.
And it goes back to the first point you made about the role of the board of directors.
Yes.
Their job, while they listen to you, the members, but of course, their job is to steer, offer guidance in terms of the greater good.
Of course. And there's a reason why they are on the board. And what must be key to understand, the board of directors comes from the belly of the membership, right? So this is where you elect them from. They don't come from outside. They are within there. And the members elect, they elect JC because they know JC is an honest man, JC is a forthright man, JC is visionary, so he will be able to guide this cooperative on a month-to-month basis or a day-to-day basis, however you want to look at it. So we will take his advice more often than not, right? Unless he says something off the cuff and we have to recall him. Because the membership have the ability to recall if you're not performing.
Well, we know where the power resides.
Yes, with the members.
The power reside with the members.
Yes.
How do you deal, and explain to me the role, your role as the your body, as it relates to facilitating a cooperative movement that comes together. So let's say a group of busmen.
Right.
Automobile operators.
Yeah.
They come together.
Well.
And they decide, you know what, we want to.
Yeah.
But
so
the skill sets among them.
Yeah.
It's you know exactly what it is. They're not necessarily too versed in finance and accounting and all of that.
Yes, it's very interesting you brought up bus operators, because that group has a great potential to form into a cooperative in our country. In fact, I've had preliminary, or I should say not I, but the Department of Cooperatives, have had preliminary meetings with them in order to form into a cooperative based on the numbers, their vast numbers, right? So the operators are not just the drivers, you will have the owners and so forth. So you will be able, based on the sheer numbers of them, to get people with different skill sets to be on a board and everything like that. Yeah.
But is it something they have given strong consideration?
Of course, they have given strong consideration to, and we will have a meeting with them very soon, follow-up meetings to make that into a reality. So there are a lot of potential groups out there that are just ready and willing to take that step. And our department, our role is to guide them. Right. Have those meetings, educate them on the rudimentary aspects of forming into a cooperative. Of course, we spoke last time we had the program about provisional directors or provisional board of directors members, where you have a group that is not officially registered as yet, but you can say, okay, well, you, for the time being, you will be the president, you will be the treasurer, and so forth, and they will guide the process. Right. And so we'll assist them in terms of creating their bylaws, which is basically the constitution of the cooperative. We will tell them about the ins and outs of it, and when they actually form, we will provide some training along with our next body called the Grenada Cooperative League, which is located in Belmont, St. George. That's the umbrella body for all cooperatives in our Tri-Island state. So we are here. And I think it's good premonition that you referred to the bus operators, because I think that is a great opportunity for us as a department and for that group to form into a cooperative so that they can become a little bit more self-sufficient and things can happen for them, right? And when that group, let's imagine that they form into a cooperative, there are so many benefits. Right? Because, as I stated before, there are unique benefits to being a cooperative in terms of tax breaks. That body will not have to pay taxes as other business organizations. So imagine they can start a business, whether it's imagine bringing in parts for the vehicles, tires for the vehicles, and then the same bus operators, owners, conductors, whoever will patronize that business, and they'll be able to get surplus. So you're getting discounts or concession rather on imports. Then you do business with that establishment, and then based on that business throughout the year, you can still get dividends. It's an amazing opportunity.
And I know for those of you that are sitting out there and you're asking yourself, what does this busman business have to do with me? How do I benefit? We've seen when the busmen find themselves in a quandary.
Yeah.
For whatever those reasons are, what happens? Those busmen decide, well, they need an increase.
Yes.
Now, they may no longer be forced to have to depend on our increase of 50 cents because they have the cooperative venture that offers them some form of financial sustainability.
Yes, that is an option for them.
That is an option for them.
And for the listeners and the viewers, what I'm speaking of, I just spoke to the operators because JC mentioned it, but there are unique opportunities for all other groups. This is a very versatile business model. So almost anything you want to do, you can turn it into a cooperative.
I mean, let's think about it rationally. Farmers.
Yes.
So there's a number of cooperatives, and maybe before you go, if you can openly talk about some of the success stories. I mean, we've talked about, I think it is okay for me, I will mention CTEC for one.
Yeah.
It's a glamorous example.
Very glamorous.
Of what pooling your resources can do.
Yes.
And when they started, they didn't start with boys that graduated and had millions of dollars, No. Little as it is, they came together. And who would you imagine? I remember when we did I spoke with them really recently. I understand that they, after having expanded on the south of the island, the south is getting too small for them.
Of course. They
are moving to the big town.
I mean, and JC, this thing is not always about being sexy. In other words, you see the glam after years, but people don't see the sacrifice. So they see CTEC operating on the highway, but it was just a group of very humble but driven taxi men that decided to form this initiative, and right now it's providing jobs for dozens and dozens of Grenadians in this country, and they were not rich, but a lot of them sacrificed, who sell land, who sell vehicles, all kind of thing to get the startup capital, and that was in the late 80s. In 2024, we are talking about expansion in Canal Road, so that will be an economic boost to the rural economy. They provide jobs, additional services, and guess what? After they do that, there might be expansion because these fellas are ambitious and visionary. They're talking about Caribbean.
So the growth that we see, the spillover effect is not. While, of course, when they came together, it was for a common interest for them.
You're right.
But what you've realized now, that common interest spills over now.
Right.
So when we talk about employment and everything else, they can safely say that we are a contributing factor,
of course,
into reducing the unemployment level in any country.
Of course, and this is one of the essential or quintessential benefits of cooperatives. They reduce unemployment, they increase the GDP, and they build communities. It's a fantastic model, absolutely fantastic.
And of course, when we take this conversation back to the directors, you must understand and appreciate and the gravity of the role that these directors play in steering the ship.
Yes.
To make sure that decisions that are taken, it's taken not myopically, but understanding,
long term, visionary. And with the directors, there are no directors for life. I just want to put that point in there. The Act speaks to people not serving for more than 6 straight years as a director. What the Act provides for also is that if you have done the 6 straight years, you can take a year break or so, and then you probably come back on. But you see, the cooperative model is not about a cult of personality or people like a small group of individuals taking it over. It's about, a broad development of a group, so everybody will get that opportunity at some point to lead, to give input, and so forth. So this is one of the reasons why the Act specifies that one should not serve for more than 6 years in a particular position. So you give a little breathing space, because different organizations, different institutions, we're moving away from cooperatives now. There's always the debate: should there be term limits on people in leadership in the board? Some are of the opinion that, well, once you're doing good, you could stay there forever, and others are of the opinion, to develop the group in its entirety, everybody should get an opportunity to have a say, in the running of the business. And this is the direction and the philosophy of cooperatives.
And I think that's where leadership, the whole concept of great leadership comes into play.
Yes.
Because great leaders are able to develop like-minded individuals.
Facts.
That's able to take the organization, the entity forward.
Facts.
If you are not able to do that, then I say that's a major failure. But the cooperative has its own stop gaps to ensure. And then there's the added element of power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts even more.
Right, and the fact is, cooperatives are not fly-by-night enterprises. They are generational.
Correct.
So let's go to the non-financials again. You will see that these cooperatives, or should I say the financials, the credit unions, decades. They head into 100 years and so forth, because these are generational institutions. And I expect that CTEC will be around when we get old.
I don't know why you say getting old and look at me. I feel insulted. You say get old and you look at me and like, hello, seriously. I've got a special arrangement.
Me and you the same age,
Listen, you see any gray on me?
No, I see no gray at all.
You see no gray on me.
Oh boy.
Don't get me. But it's interesting. Let's just speak to the young people for the next few minutes, though.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a graduation ceremony just a few weeks ago.
Right.
And the valedictorian, in her speech, she speaking to her fellow graduates, and I was saying to them, we've spent the last number of years under the same roof. Now we're about to go out into the world and make our mark.
Yes.
But the reality is that we're going out into a work environment that have limited resources for all of us.
Right.
And I was listening to her, I was like, wow. She said, the question is, how can you make a positive change? And it takes me back to a couple of years ago, and I always make reference to it. I had some young people from TAMCC, brilliant guys. They came from robotics. And fellas ain't no bright like me. I ain't even nowhere close to bright like them.
Yeah.
Academic, those guys are brilliant.
Yeah.
And when I asked them, where to from here? They were lost. Because for them, they didn't see any future. Cooperatives. So your area of expertise might be you, Mohan, you the tech, you probably robotics.
Right.
I'm the accountant. The other person studied business administration. Right? And you might be thinking about going to, let's say, GDB. You've had conversations with GDB on some prospect for a business. Maybe you can start thinking. Each of us have a little $10,000.
Right.
Why not, instead of I venturing on my own and having to deal with the challenge of what's happening in the marketplace?
Pool your mental resources.
Pool our mental resources. Let's find a business model that serves our common interests.
Yeah.
And come together, and you might just later on, you realize 20 years later, as with our friends, you might then be able to realize your own personal dream. But it means you may need to shelve your personal desires.
Right.
That selfish mentality, that competitive mentality, come together. And why not?
Yeah, these are vast possibilities, and it speaks to also the role of the department, because you spoke about schools there, TAMCC, tertiary level, but one of the things that we do, we go into schools to the Form 5s. We even go to primary schools.
Right.
And let me tell you, the conversation is amazing with the primary school children in terms of, what they can do with cooperatives, and just inculcating that concept into the little minds in terms of what you can do as a group as opposed to as an individual. Yeah. So the robotic students, and all these sort of groups, the government of Grenada, because we are under the auspices of the government, they have a focus in terms of cooperatives, and they talk about particular groups like youth,
Right.
talk about women, right? But nowadays, based on what I'm seeing, yes, youth and women, but men are sort of out of it too, based on certain things happening. So that cooperative vehicle, that tool, can be used for all and sundry, right? All and sundry, particularly if we put that concept into our young minds. This is when you will really see it blossom. This is when things can really, really happen.
Folks, the opportunities, the prospects, they're endless. But it would take sacrifices on every side. The education system, I was saying this morning years ago, as you go to school now, that you are mandated to study math and English.
Right.
But a lot of people would say to you, listen, I did math, and all of us, we had that experiences. You leave school with 7, 8, 10, 15 subjects. And beyond that, you never had a need for it. Why not decide, you know what, instead of you deciding to do a whole CXC math curriculum, why not go back to teach kids, introducing to them entrepreneurial skills?
But let me tell you,
Those
that is amazing, you know. And it could be, I don't know, maybe it could even be done at the primary level. One time we went to a primary school. Is it Beacon and Belmont? And the principal at the time had the children, you know, in certain areas, vending and doing certain things, selling vegetables and provisions and all this sort of thing to get that entrepreneurial spirit going. And my understanding is there is even talks at the tertiary level in the T.A. Marisho Community College, which is very visionary and you know, have a lot of foresight there in introducing an entrepreneurial department.
It's needed.
That talks is on a serious consideration.
And
as
you
we
know
speak.
why most people may not venture to thinking about it? Because again, historically, the plantocracy system. So the whole concept of me selling something, in my mind, it seems as though, well, that's what people on the lower strata that they would do.
They're
so
wrong.
I don't want to sell nothing.
Yes.
But hello, we may start off by selling dasheen at $24 at dasheen in the supermarket, you know.
Oh boy.
So imagine
crazy
if
now.
we decide to tell the farmers, listen, plant the dasheen. We buy it from you. And we then redistribute and do all of that. It's opportunity there.
Yeah.
That are potentials that
Yeah.
literally that. But I think we have agreed that it takes a refashioning of what's happening upstairs.
And a lot of groups that quote unquote are vulnerable, that cooperative model will help them greatly. You just spoke about farmers. You just spoke about bus operators. The department is really here to assist these groups into forming. And I think this is a very, very ripe opportunity in 2024 for people to really exploit and explore that cooperative mentality in terms of forming groups, so that, you know, when you form into those sort of groups, you pool your fiscal resources, your mental resources, all this sort of things. So therefore, you can, you know, come against external shocks as opposed to if you're operating as an individual. Yeah, so farmers out there, bus operators out there, ensure that you get in touch with the Department of Cooperatives so that we can inform you, educate you, and ultimately register you so that you can become more powerful as an entity.
It's interesting in the corporate world. While they may not necessarily subscribe to the corporate philosophies as it is, when hard time take them, what do? You hear about conglomerations, amalgamations.
That's right.
It's the same principles now that's been embraced holistically. We can't survive on our own.
Right.
Let us come together. Let us come together.
Fantastic.
Why not?
Exactly.
Folks, let us come together. We have this dependency syndrome on the private sector, the government. The government is not doing X, Y, and Z. Well, listen, government is doing X, Y, and Z. There's a Department of Cooperatives that is set up there. And you were saying, Brian, give us a call.
Yes.
Let's have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation. You can reach out to us at 435-8779. Email clerk@cooperatives.gov.gd, or you can go on Facebook and look for the Department of Cooperatives and message us, and you'll also see information as to alternative ways to get in touch with our department. So we are here for you.
Well, folks, the clarion call has gone out. The question now, you have the information. What are you willing to do with the information? Are you willing just to be satisfied with having heard it and tell a friend? Or are you willing to just ignore it and go back in your little comfort zone of self-pity? Nobody knows the trouble that you see. Well, here's what. Maybe nobody, because you need to form a cooperative.
Yes.
And the rest of the members will in fact share that trouble with you. Folks, this is the way we leave that conversation, because all good things must come to an end. And I keep telling you, life is great, notwithstanding your situation or circumstances. It is 15 minutes onto the hour. Reminding you at the top of the hour, it's going to be the luncheon edition, a production of our News and Current Affairs Department, and will be presented by Beverly Teleson. Until then, so long, everybody, and let's find a way that we can cooperate into forming a cooperative. Until then, have a great one. JC loves you.
All right.